I don't know. We'll see what's happening here. Okay, so let me show you clean up my Photoshop screen here. So on the left, I have the toolbar over here. Here I have the image, and over here I have the background showing, the background image in a layer. So the only panel I have open is my layers panel. When I first open up Photoshop, I get rid of everything else that opens up except the layers panel and just have that, because that's all I ever really use. So the first thing I'm going to do is duplicate this image. And I like speed or shortcut keys, so I'm going to Command J, which duplicated the layer. Now I'm going to go up to Image, Adjustments, and I'm going to pick black and white. And it's going to give me an option if I want to go through and make adjustments here, but I'm just doing a simple black and white at this point, so I'm just going to say okay. So now I have a black and white layer over top of my background layer. So if I turn it off and on by clicking the eyeball, you see the layer there. Okay, the layer is at 100% opacity. So if I wanted to have it just be partially color, I could reduce the opacity of the layer, but I'm going to keep it at 100% right now because I'm trying to make an extreme example. All right, down at the bottom of the layers panel are little effects. The one that looks like a camera, or I affectionately call it the washing machine, is the mask icon. So I'm going to click that. And what it does is it put this white mask next to the black and white image. Now the saying is that white reveals and black conceals. White, because the mask is white. I was so confused about masks when I first got started on this. What it reveals is the image that's next to it. So it is currently white. So it is showing everything that's in this image, the black and white. If I reverse the color, which I can do by hitting Command I, which is the inverse, it conceals that image. So now you are concealing the black and white and seeing the color from below. So I'm going to go back to white. White reveals what's to the left of it. All right, now this is where the mask fun comes into play. You pick a brush on the left side in the tools panel, and I select the brush tool. I like to use speed keys, so I press B, which gave me the brush tool. The brush tool is activated now. Be careful because brush tools have different options like pencil and mixer brush and all of that. So you want this top one that just says brush tool. And it is a fairly large circle right now. The properties of the tool are at the top once you've selected the brush tool. For example, right now I've got an 800 pixel brush and it has a hard edge. You can see the hard edges on it right here. If I pick the soft edges, it would be a fuzzy brush. It's also painting at 100% opacity. So whatever I paint now on here will be painted on at 100%. So in effect, when I paint black paint on this image, because you paint black paint on a white mask, when you paint black, it's going to reveal 100% of the color that's below. It's kind of like an eraser, but it's not erasing anything. It's just like punching a hole in the mask. So I'm going to click right now with this big brush on these balloons. Click. And there you see the color is coming back. Now, one thing I need to mention, I'm going to Command Z to undo that. It's down here on the colors. The color swatches are down here in the lower left. The color that's on top is black, and that's what I want, is black to paint on white. If I had a black mask like this, click Command I, if I had a black mask, I would want to paint with white on it. If your colors are reversed, or if they are a different color on top, you can press D, which will give you the default colors. D gives you default, but notice that it's white on top of black. X will reverse the colors. So I use D and X a lot to pick the color that I want. In this case, I want to paint with black on white. I'm going to zoom in. Command plus will zoom in. And I'm going to make my brush smaller because I want to paint those balloons. Actually, I guess they're floats. So I'm going to use the bracket next to the P is a bracket tool, left bracket. Tapping it makes the brush smaller, and tapping the right bracket makes the brush bigger. So I'm going to make my brush smaller. Now I'm going to come over here and start painting. And when I let go of the mouse, right now I've got my finger held down on the mouse. When I let go of the mouse, you'll see at the mask, there's a black dot that appeared on the mask. And that's the area that I just painted, and it's revealing the color image that's below. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Does anybody have a question right now?
Cam.
Yes.
This is Diane. In the very beginning, you said that you you had a white canvas, and so you said you Command I to invert it to go
to black.
Black.
Command I is the inverse. It makes an inverse.
Then how did you go from black back to white?
Command I again.
Okay, thank you.
Inverse. So as long as you have the mask clicked, see there's a white selection line around the mask. If I had the picture clicked, the white selection line is around the picture. If I were to paint right now, I would be painting with gray, it looks like, on top of the picture. Always have the mask selected before you start doing any of this painting. So the goal is you paint with a brush. If it's a white mask, you paint with black. If it's a black mask, you paint with white. I might do that in a minute, but if I want to bring back any other color right now, I could come down here and do the boat, for example. Do the boat in, this boat. And don't forget its reflection down here. And maybe do this boat right here, which is also picking up reflection from the boat next to it. This is a red boat. And look, I went down here. Oops, I should go down here because this is the reflection of those balloons. That looks kind of cool too. Bring those in. So I'm just doing it as an obvious example right now. Command minus brings you back to the whole image. I don't know if I would ever really do that, but I just wanted to show you by painting on the mask over here, you can see where I kind of like erased where the black and white was to reveal the color from the image below. So there is an image that I did that way. If you painted at a lower opacity, for example, if I painted at 20% opacity, I can bring in just a little bit of color at 20%. And every successive painting will add another 20%. And look at the difference in color over here on the mask. It's like pale gray, and then I got darker gray and darker gray. If I do it again and again and again, ultimately I'll be to black, which is 100%, because it builds up over time each time I add a little bit more in. So I'm going to do that on the butterflies in a minute. I'm not going to want to bring in the butterfly eyes and detail too harshly because I'm going to want to still have it look like a painting, but I do want to bring back eyes, for example, on a bird or eyes of the butterfly. So that's an example. Now, when you shift click too, holding down the shift key and clicking on the mask disables the mask briefly till you can see what you've done, and then you can click again and it comes back. Now,
What do you say? How do you do that, Cam?
Yes?
To disable the mask, what did you press?
Shift click.
Shift click.
Shift click. Yes. Disables the mask, just so that you can take a look at the image below or at the image above and say, is there anything else that I needed to pick up? So sometimes you can do that. All right, you can also delete the mask altogether if you kind of got into it and you realize, man, I've screwed things up. You can right click and delete the mask. But here's another thing. What if I was painting on here? Let me go back here. What if I don't want this area right here? I can paint again on this area with white paint, and that hides again. So I'm going to reverse my brush colors by pressing X. Now I'm painting with white. And if I paint over at, oops, click.
And the opacity.
At 100%, I lost my,
Yes.
At 100%, if I paint back at 100%, it's back to white. I mean, the white paint has covered over what I painted before. So as you're going around, like with fine detail, if you ever make a mistake and you got off track, you can just reverse your colors and paint back in what you just painted out, or the opposite. So that's one example that I want to do. Okay, I'm going to close this and I'm not going to save it. Close, don't save.
Cam,
Yes.
your screen on my screen is getting a bit cut off. It's not, that's better.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay. So now I'm going to open.
I have also a question.
Yes.
Because Lightroom has the same sort of the brush and the mask. Is that less good compared to the Photoshop?
I like the accuracy of Photoshop. I like that. I mean, yes, you can do a selective color with an adjustment brush in Lightroom, but I prefer the
yeah,
layers.
I think this is a better system. I tried it in Lightroom, but I have never been happy about it.
No, it's much easier in Photoshop.
If I may say something here, it's better in Photoshop because you do it in layers. So if you want to go back later, a year or 10 years later, you want to edit it, you can change the layers because that will be there. You can delete it. You don't have to start doing from scratch.
Right.
Or you can only, do minor adjustments.
Yes.
Because the layers will stay there in Photoshop file or TIFF.
Yeah, as long as, right, as if it's a PSD file or if it's a TIFF file, it will retain the layers. If you save it as a JPEG, it will flatten it and you've lost your layers. Yes, good point. Okay, so now I'm going to open up butterflies, these two butterflies. And they did not open up on top of each other. So I need to take my painted butterfly here. I'm going to drag it by clicking my mouse in the top and just dragging it off to the side. There's several ways to do this, but this is a way I like. I'm going to press V for my move tool and hold down the shift key and drag it over here. And by holding down the shift key, when I drag it over, it automatically aligns the two layers. Let me undo that and do a different way. Edit, undo. Okay, where am I to?
You lost.
But if I lost it. File, open, butterfly painted, open. Okay, another way I can do this. Daggone it. File, open, butterfly painted also. Okay, it's here. They normally would open like this, tab next to each tab. You can also go onto this one, do select all, edit, copy, and then go to your other butterfly and go to edit, paste. And that pasted the painted layer on top of the background layer. If I'd gotten these backwards, I could click this and I'd have to unlock this layer. But I could reverse these if I wanted to by dragging one layer over the other. But you see here, I've got a lot of lost detail in the butterfly. And if I remove that layer, I see that the detail is under there. So I'm going to add a mask by going down here to the washing machine. On the top layer, I'm going to add a mask. Click. So now I'm going to pick a brush, B for the brush tool, and I want to paint with black. So I have to reverse my colors, X. Now my black is there. My brush tool is kind of large, so I'm going to reduce the size by doing my left bracket, click, click, click. And I'm going to change the opacity down to about 20%. So now I can, if this is working, I can even use my Wacom tablet. If I don't think I attached it properly, so it's not working right now, but that really helps to get in fine tune on things, is to use your Wacom tablet. But I'm just going to click a little on the butterfly here. I'm just tapping on the butterfly gently to try to bring in the antennas a little bit. You can see just a little bit of gray is happening over here. And maybe a little bit down here in the legs. So now it's less harsh on the painting. And if I do a shift click, you can see the difference where I added detail back in to the butterfly. So it's just a little bit, and that was only 18% opacity to bring in a little bit of the detail back on the butterfly. Same thing if you had a painted example of a bird. You would want to bring back in the eye of the bird to be sharp, or the center of a flower to be sharp, or the wings of a bee, for example. And then you save that as your new example, and you're done with your painted butterfly, who now has eyes and antennas again. Any questions there?
You sure make it look easy. I can't wait to try.
The hard part could be getting the two images lined up, but if they're the same size and the same resolution, they ought to line up.
No, I just mean in general masking. It makes sense. It's really clicking in my brain right now, but I hope I go practice.
All right, well, what I should do is I can email you these files if you want, so that you can practice on these. That would work. Then you've got two that would work.
End up with a good video, even if it's not the beginning part.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope we end up with a good video.
Yeah, I've been trying to take notes, so hopefully that helps.
Good. Okay, so now I'm going to shut these both. I'm not going to save them. Click. Cancel. Don't save, rather. And this one, and I'm going to open up the shoe. So this is a shoe. It's a huge shoe. It's a light at the Neon Museum in Las Vegas. If you haven't been there, it is worth going to Las Vegas just to go to the Neon Museum. It's amazing. And on the day I was there, it was a flat white sky. And this is up on a pole up in front of the museum. So I wanted to add some interest to this area. So I'm going to go also here and open up another one, and it's these bubbles. Now I need to get them on top of the shoe as a layer. So I'll do what I call the long way. Select all, which puts the marching ants around it. Edit, copy. Click the shoe. Edit, paste. It's right over top of the shoe. Now, if it were smaller than the shoe, for example, if it were like down here when it came in, I would do a Command T for transform to put the handles on it. And then I would drag it up here to fit the shoe. It doesn't matter if it gets bigger or smaller, just so it covers the whole area of the shoe. And then I'm going to click the check mark. And now I have two layers, the bubble layer and the shoe layer. Now, this is where I'm going to do a textures class at some point. I've done that before, but it's this is a brief bit. This is called adding a texture. Now I need to do what's called change the blend mode. So I'm going to take this normal right here. I'm going to drop it down to multiply. Click. And now you can see the shoe below the bubbles. But it's at 100% opacity, so I'm going to reduce that a little bit, make it not so harsh. Okay, but I still don't want the bubbles on the shoe. So I'm going to add a mask. Pick my brush, B, and I'm going to paint with black. And I'm going to do it at 100%. And I'm going to do it with a hard brush. Just because I have some, whoopsie, I just tapped. Look, just tapping does that. So now I just start bringing back in the shoe. And this is where using the Wacom tablet would really help to get to the edges and stuff more carefully. But as I draw, let me draw all the way down here. I kind of draw messy until I get to the edges. Ooh, Up. I went up too high. So now I can reverse my colors and just come back here and paint it back in with black again. Now I'm going to Command plus, which zooms in on the shoe more. And I'm going to reduce the size of the tool smaller. And now I can get in, oops, I got to reverse my colors again. Now I can get in here and really work on getting rid of the excess stuff around the shoe. Okay, so I can fine tune the whole thing. I'm not using my Wacom tablet right now, so it's coming out a little bit messy, but what the heck. Always make your brush bigger or smaller as need be. And then Command minus, 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 and you can begin to see the difference now between the mask. Here's where I've been drawing with the mask, and here's the actual shoe right now. So that's adding a texture. Now, if this was a flower and I added a texture over a flower that had kind of a plain background, I might want to reduce the opacity, take the brush down at like 20% or 30% and just paint off a little bit of texture. So you have control right here with the opacity slider by how much texture you want to remove or how much you want to leave. So that's another kind of an extreme example of adding a mask. So the mask, the white mask, reveals what's to the left, and then the black paint removes or conceals what's to the left. Okay? All right. Any questions here? Again, a simple example.
Yes,
Not
need
gonna
to
say this.
practice.
Yes, practice. Okay, don't save. All right, and don't save. Now, the last one I'm going to do is this image. So I took this photograph the other day at Surrey-Brook, and I love the, it's an allium plant, and I love the detail that's in here. As a matter of fact, let me adjust this a little bit more and make it a little bit brighter. I just did what's called a levels adjustment. But I thought some of this background stuff was a little bit busy. So I just started playing around in Photoshop. And I went up here to filter. Let me see. First, I'm going to duplicate the layer so that I've got the original layer below. And then I went up here to filter, blur, and I did a radial blur. And I just picked whatever was here. It said spin, amount is 10, and quality is good. What the heck? Good enough for me. I don't know what it's going to do anyway. So I just clicked OK. Wow. It's interesting. It softened up the background, but it also spun the flower head. But I want that back the way it was. So what do? I put a mask on, click, and I pick my brush with B, the brush tool, and I'm going to paint with black. And this time I'm going to use a soft brush instead of a hard brush. My circle is really small, so I'm going to increase the size of the circle. And at 100%, I'm just going to paint back in this head. And I can go a little bit down the stem too, till it kind of disappears. So now, shift click, you see the difference. I was just playing around with it and I kind of liked it. But then, now I don't like this black mark down here. And I don't like that black mark down there. So I went over here to my Band-Aid tool and I'm just gonna kind of make it a little bit bigger and just gonna kind of, oops, that's on the mask. Now I can't do anything with the Band-Aid tool on the mask. So I have to go to the image. And I'm gonna just kind of click that and click that. Not wild about that either. Command Z, Command Z. So maybe I'm gonna use my clone tool. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, use my clone tool and do an option click here and paint on, yeah, a little bit of here and a little bit of here. And I see I got some line in there, but that's better. All right, so maybe I like that. And now the other thing I did is I like that purple that's in this upper left-hand corner. So I thought, what the heck? I'm going to put a little purple in there too. So I hit my brush again, but notice I'm on the image, not on the mask. And I'm going to sample this color by option. See the eyedropper? Click, and notice that my color sample down here changed to that pale purple. And I'm going to paint at about 50%. Just going to paint a little bit of purple down in here too. Could kind of spot it. And then maybe I'll do a different bit of green in here too. And just kind of change the edge of that. And I'm going to go back to that purple. I'm always sampling, option click. I'm going to sample down here and get it there. So that's what I did for the image that I put on Facebook the other day. So here's the original. And there is my modified version. So I did several things here. I did a mask. Oh no, I duplicated the image. I used the blur filter tool. Then I put a mask on. I removed the blur off the flower head. And then I painted a little bit of purple down in the lower right hand to kind of balance the image. So that's what I did there.
Very nice.
All right. So those are some brief examples of how I use masks to bring back detail, to work on selective color, to add a texture. See, now on this one, I did an example, harsh example of color. So here is the background. There's the black and white layer, and then I removed the color off using the mask on that. Here's another one too that I just did recently. Cancel, open recent. Did you have a question, Diane?
I did. I hate to go back. When you did the filter and the blur, that was where did you find that? Was that under filter at the top?
Filter, blur.
Filter,
Yes.
blur. Okay.
And then it was radial blur.
Okay.
Underneath there. So this woman sent me a photograph of this scene, and she didn't like her eyes. This is the underneath photograph. I just turned off this layer. She didn't like her, she liked her face in this photograph. She didn't like it in this photograph, although I saw very little difference. But I'm going to shift click the mask. You can see her face there, how it's moving. So I put her face underneath her other one, and then I used a mask and painted in the face from the picture below into the picture above.
Oh my.
So you can do that when somebody has their eyes closed in one shot, and you know everybody else has their eyes open, and that, you know, if you have a shot where you can kind of swap the eyes out. So I used a mask the other day to do this picture for her. She also had some photo bombers in there, so I used white paint and I just painted on the photograph and got rid of. So here's the original photo. See the guy here and a guy over here, and then these little guys like they're coming out of her head here. So I used white paint to get rid of some of those guys, and then I cropped it at the end and sent it to her. So she was happy, but you know, it was just an opportunity to practice masks again. So masks can help you to remove things, to bring in things that wouldn't normally have been in a photograph. I mean, this is the first photograph she sent me, and it was, what do you do with that image? You know, it was a tough one. I couldn't remove the fan with any success. I mean, I could remove it, but there was a big hole there and Santa Claus was missing a foot. It just didn't look right. So anyway, I could have put a texture over this whole thing and then just revealed, you know, this area of the image, but they were just kind of lousy iPhone shots to begin with. So that's it for today.
Very good. You did a great job. Great job for your first Zoom.
Yeah, I'm going to stop share. I think that's what I have to do to stop the share and get back to the main screen, I hope. Yes.
But it's still recording, right?
I think so.
Yeah,
So now I can stop the recording.
It's been working.
Good.